Yes, thanks. Actually, Kurt is going to be.
Oh, Kurt's doing it. My apologies.
That's all right. So I'll hand it off to him.
Good morning, council members. Kurt Upton, Community Planning and Development, here to discuss the East Central Area Plan. And let me to the next slide. So I know we're short on time today. I'm going to go over a brief presentation of the East Central Plan, give you an overview of the plan structure and the content, as well as the review criteria, and that way we can have plenty of time for any questions. A reminder that the East Central area are
my apologies. Kurt, my apologies. I'm assuming everyone can see it the same way that I am. So who's ever controlling the screen, can you do the slideshow? Oh. So that you see one slide at a time versus people are going, oh, perfect, got it, you're good.
Great. Thank you. The East Central area are the 6 neighborhoods along Colfax Avenue between Broadway on the west and Colorado Boulevard on the east. About 83% of the residents are within Council District 10, and then Council District 9 also contains a small portion of the area. Like Comprehensive Plan 2040 and Blueprint Denver, there are 6 vision elements that we use to look at a variety of topics to make sure we're addressing all the issues in an area. That's consistent with the East Central Plan and how we've structured it. We look at land use and urban design, built form, affordable housing, small businesses, mobility, and quality of life infrastructure, which is open space and landscaping. There's always, in addition to that, there's sections in the plan for each individual neighborhood, as well as the Colfax corridor and a section on outlining implementation strategies. We have a section of the plan that's focused on equity and consistent with how we analyze and define equity in the comprehensive plan. We look at vulnerability to displacement, access to opportunity. That includes amenities, healthcare, quality education, as well as expanding housing and jobs diversity. And so we have a section of the plan that outlines how we've used the equity lens, both in the planning process, but also in how equity is embedded into recommendations throughout the plan. So I'm going to touch on the priority recommendations that are in the East Central Plan. Because it's comprehensive, there are a number of recommendations, but there's really 6 that have risen to the top, both in terms of our research and data analysis and through the community engagement process. And the first is to strengthen the local economy by connecting residents, in particular existing residents, to the job opportunities in the East Central area. In particular, there's a strong healthcare presence with a variety of hospitals. We have recommendations on partnering with those hospitals. We've had good engagement with the hospitals, and they're interested in partnering on things like affordable housing, healthcare for residents, and connecting residents to jobs. The second part of this is to make sure that the locally owned independent culture of our small business community, particularly on Colfax, but also in other small business areas, that local small business culture is maintained through the changes in both in infrastructure, such as the Colfax bus rapid transit, and ongoing development in the area. Second is to make housing more affordable and provide a wider range of options to families. We have a number of recommendations. We actually have an entire chapter of the plan on affordable housing, but providing that diversity of housing options, and particularly family-friendly housing in the East Central area, and using all of the methods that we have at our disposal within the city, as well as getting creative and innovating in terms of new tools. In particular, we recommend including zoning in the toolbox to help with addressing the affordable housing shortage and making sure that new units are well served by mass transit. Homelessness and people experiencing homelessness has been a large topic and a priority throughout the planning process. There are a number of great services in the East Central area for people experiencing homelessness. And so we have a section of the plan on social services addressing homelessness, as well as those who may be at risk of experiencing homelessness. So we have policies on reducing involuntary displacement and improving social services to people who are currently experiencing homelessness. Fourth has to do with mobility, with an emphasis on walkability, pedestrian and bicyclist safety, and further improving public transit infrastructure. That includes keeping a focus on Colfax and making sure that it's a pedestrian-friendly place as we move forward with bus rapid transit, and in particular, safe crossings along Colfax. The other top priority that has risen to the top have been the streets immediately parallel to Colfax. So that's 13th, 14th, 16th, and 17th, making sure that those are priority both to travel along and to cross as impacts from different changing traffic patterns continue to occur with the development of downtown and with the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit project. As many of you know, the East Central area contains a number of historic landmark buildings as well as historic districts. That has been a consistent community value throughout the process to continue improving historic preservation and actually expanding historic districts. We have a number of recommendations in the plan to both add historic designations and create new creative ways to preserve existing buildings, such as through an adaptive reuse ordinance, looking at different incentive-based approaches to encourage preservation of buildings, as well as when new buildings come in, making sure that we're looking at that historic urban design and architecture when we're developing design guidelines and standards. And then lastly, an emphasis on reducing carbon pollution and climate change impacts. And so the plan recommends directing growth strategically to locations that are well served by high quality transit, as well as green infrastructure best practices and adding landscaping, trees, and other stormwater management techniques to help make these neighborhoods more climate resilient. Each section of the plan, each section of the neighborhood portion of the plan has what we call transformative projects, where we illustrate physical changes that could occur when these recommendations are implemented. And so we have a variety of sort of strategic projects that range from infrastructure improvements to redevelopment of the District 6 police station, new open spaces, and other development opportunities. And then the last section of the plan outlines an implementation program that summarizes the recommendations of the plan, puts them into these three buckets of regulatory projects, infrastructure projects, and partnerships and programs, which will set up our implementation program moving forward. So there's three criteria that both council and the planning board use to adopt an area plan. First, all area plans are supplements to Comprehensive Plan 2040. And so the criteria are: one, that the process used to develop the plan was inclusive. Second is that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And third, that the plan demonstrates a long-term view. So I will touch on those three criteria. The East Central plan was developed over a 3-year period, which is significantly longer than we usually take on small area plans. And that was in response to working in good faith with community members who wanted some more time for outreach and engagement. We have had robust community engagement. Over 3,500 residents participated in the East Central process, and we've received over 10,000 comments over the 3 years. This has included community meetings in a variety of different formats, ranging from our large community-wide workshops to focus group meetings where we combine topic-based experts on priority topics such as affordable housing or street safety with residents that are interested in those topics and have a detailed discussion. We've had 14 focus group meetings. All of our community workshops have had an online equivalent. And so we've had a number of activities online as well as surveys. We've had a standing invitation throughout the entire 3 years that we will attend any community meeting that we are invited to. And so we've met several times with different RNOs and other community groups, as well as office hour sessions and field surveys with community members. Outreach has included 23 newsletters, multiple planning board meetings, over 80 locations that we've done pop-up events, flyered, and we've had good coverage by local media. We've been on all the major TV news stations, Denver Post, as well as other local publications. Language access is something that we took seriously with this process, as well as all of our area plans. Even though the East Central area does not contain a significant number of limited or non-English speaking residents, we did have professional language interpretation, food and childcare at every community workshop. We had multiple planners on our staff who were also bilingual and available to assist residents that needed language services. All of our flyers and outreach materials that we used to advertise the community workshops were done both in English and Spanish. All of our electronic communications, web materials, and online activities are compatible with smartphones. They were all ADA accessible and available for auto translation service. And by request, when people contacted us and said that they would like the plan materials in printed instead of online, we provided those services as well. Throughout the process, one of the things that I think is an improvement and that we got better on in this process compared to other processes in the past, and something personally I'm proud of that we did, was we set up a system to track demographics of participants from the very beginning through both our online engagement as well as our in-person engagement. And instead of just using that information to report at the end of the process, what we did was we evaluated that in an ongoing way to make real-time adjustments to who we were targeting outreach to during the process to better fill those gaps. And so what we're seeing in our demographics, we took action to do more targeted outreach to reach a diversity of demographics of the area. And that included senior living facilities, supportive housing where residents experiencing homelessness live, as well as for the first time that I've done in my career, we partnered with community partners to do direct outreach to people experiencing homelessness, heard what they had to say about social services and what we could do to improve them, as well as other locations such as schools and apartment management companies. I'll also note that we partnered with Councilman Hines' office, who put in his own resources and significant staff time in looking at targeted outreach, particularly to younger, lower income renters in Cap Hill. And he and his staff held a number of community events to improve our outreach to that gap in demographics as well. We did 3 drafts of the East Central Plan available for public comment. We received over 3,000 comments on the draft plan overall, from about 300 participants. Many of those changes that we made to the plan were small and clarification in nature. However, we did make over 100 substantive policy changes based on that participation from the community that really improved the plan as we went through the various drafts. We went to the extent of responding to all 3,000 comments. We have all of our responses and all of those comments available in a spreadsheet on our project website that anyone can take a look at. The planning board approved the draft East Central area plan unanimously. There were 7 members who spoke in support of the plan and 3 who spoke in opposition at the planning board hearing. So we have found that the East Central area plan meets the first criteria, which is the inclusive community process. Next, I'll touch on plan consistency. I'm going to go through this section quickly. All the plan consistency language is included in your staff report, but I'll say that the East Central plan contains a range of goals and strategies that are consistent with Comprehensive Plan 2040. Again, the structure of the plan mirrors the structure of Blueprint Denver with the vision elements and the different topics that we used in the East Central plan. Land use, mobility, quality of life, a number of these strategies and policies are directly consistent with the East Central plan. I'd be happy to go in further into detail if there's any questions on any of the consistency criteria. Maps in the East Central plan also update Blueprint Denver in terms of the land use growth, modal priority in terms of the street infrastructure, as well as the equity maps. So we find that the second criteria of plan consistency has been met. And then the third criteria and final criteria is that it takes a long-term view. The East Central plan has a 2040 planning horizon, which is our standard 20-year plus planning horizon for these plans. It establishes a balanced approach to strategic growth and change in locations best served by transit, as well as preservation strategies to maintain the look, feel, historic urban design of these neighborhoods as well. And so we do find that the East Central plan has the appropriate long-term perspective. So with that, staff does recommend approval with the condition that the document be edited for clarity and correctness. The next steps in the process will be City Council later this month for first reading and scheduled for October 5th for the public hearing. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kurt. All right, colleagues, you got any questions? I'm just scrolling up. I do not see any raised hands. So is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Kurt, can you stop the screen share so I just make sure anyone, oh, there goes one. Councilwoman Torres. Excuse me, Councilwoman Torres. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I was deferring to the council members for this district. I am interested if Kurt wouldn't mind just kind of going over some of the land use policy recommendations that that you briefly mentioned, kind of what came out of this process in terms of in that area.
Sure, happy to answer that. So there's a variety of land use recommendations, again, focused mostly on directing strategic growth to Colfax Avenue. We've taken a little different approach with this project than we would normally do in planning along a high capacity transit corridor, in that the standard sort of TOD or transit oriented development practice, which Denver has used in the past and other cities have used, where we would automatically allow more housing to be located near transit as a way to have more residents benefit from those services. We've taken a little different approach and said that we would only allow additional housing and additional development along Colfax when certain community benefits are provided, with the top priority of that being affordable housing. We also have some other community benefits that relate to other priorities we've heard, such as keeping the locally owned sort of mom and pop small businesses along Colfax, and historic preservation. Other land use recommendations that we have are mainly focused on historic preservation and design quality. And so we have recommendations to make it easier for small commercial buildings to be reused as a way to preserve those buildings, and kind of making sure that Colfax continues to contain that sort of unique and eclectic architecture along Colfax. We also have recommendations for better preserving the neighborhoods, and particularly when additional housing options are integrated into those neighborhoods, such as accessory dwelling units, duplexes and triplexes, that we make sure that those policies don't have an unintended consequence in encouraging demolition. And so that those new housing options are integrated in a way that maintains and preserves historic homes rather than encourages more scrapes.
Thank you, Kurt. I'm particularly intrigued by the community benefits language because I think that's increasingly important, especially as West Denver is kind of in the midst of its area plan. So that's really helpful information. I'm curious about the focus on Colfax and whether or not there was any additional focus on your other major arteries like Colorado and Broadway.
Yeah, great question. I mean, we do have recommendations for all the neighborhoods, as well as all the additional commercial corridors. Colfax was a point of emphasis for a couple of reasons. One was early in the process when we started mapping comments from the community, we saw a clear pattern where we created this heat map, and where a huge majority of comments from the public were focused on Colfax. Colfax seemed to rise to the top as really an important part of this area. So we made the decision based on that feedback to really make Colfax an emphasis and create its own chapter. And secondly, because there are changes that we are anticipating along Colfax, more changes, in particular with the implementation of Colfax Bus Rapid Transit, we wanted to make sure that we were appropriately planning for those changes. But we do have recommendations that are obviously not related to Colfax for each different neighborhood as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Torres. Councilwoman Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kurt, I'm sorry if I missed this, but you said you had over 3,000 comments from 300 people. Does that mean that 300 people participated in this, or were there more people who participated?
Oh yeah, so there were several thousand people who participated over the 3-year period. The 300 participants was just on the draft plan that we put out a few months ago, where we had basically an online activity where people could view the plan and provide comments directly into the plan. And so 300 community members participated in taking a look at that final product. But throughout the planning process, there were a lot more than 300.
And so did you say it's been going on for 3 years? So it started in 2017?
Correct.
So it's council district 9 and 10. So you had the previous council members and then the current council members?
That's correct, yes.
So I've received, I don't know, a handful of emails from people who are opposed to it, but I haven't heard much else about it. So I guess I'll wait until we have our hearing at the full council meeting to learn more about what the council members think about it and what community members think about it. But did you all talk about any concurrent efforts that CPD has going on, like the group living proposal, residential infill, and then did you talk about ADUs?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's a number of concurrent projects that we made sure to coordinate with. All of those we looked at, including also the affordable housing zoning incentive project, which is looking at building heights and other standards as a way to encourage affordable housing. We closely coordinate with all of those. I mean, anytime we're looking at more housing development in an area, that generates a variety of opinions from the public. And so we made sure that that those strategies were thought through, and in particular on the building heights and community benefits recommendation we had, and the integration of ADUs and other housing options, that we were making sure that we were closely coordinating with those processes.
I just have one quick final question. When you were initially reaching out to people, did you like flyer households, or how did you inform people other than social media? Did you actually flyer people's houses?
Yeah, so we did do flyering throughout the process. We didn't, East Central area has, it's Cap Hill. There's, actually, I think, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, about 50,000 residents in the East Central area. So we didn't flyer every property. We're not even sure that that's feasible because just so many apartment buildings are in the area. So what we did was we looked at sort of targeted outreach, and so not just electronic outreach that we normally do, but flyering places that people gather, so libraries, rec centers, businesses, schools. We did a more targeted flyering to help supplement our electronic outreach.
All right, I'm asking you these questions because a very small part of my district is going to be included in the near Southeast area plan. So I'm just curious. And while you were talking, I texted a friend who lives in City Park West to ask her if she knew about it and if she participated. And she wrote me back, "Tell me more," which means that she didn't know about it or participate in it. So I'm just wondering what more we can do. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Black. Councilman Hines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Black, for your thoughts or comments about the outreach. Actually, all the council members who have commented so far. I would say that this area, the East Central area, is predominantly multifamily units, and so doing a traditional door-to-door flyering process is more difficult in this situation. That said, we did actually flyer. I don't know necessarily if CPD did, but as they mentioned, my office got involved, and we went door to door, and by door to door I mean apartment building to apartment building, and we put flyers in community boards. We talked to people as they were going into their apartment and asked them if they would be willing to put ECAP flyers on their boards. I think we distributed more than 3,000 flyers ourselves, just our office, and we focused a lot on areas that had underrepresentation before we got involved. So, excuse me, CPD mentioned that that this process was longer than the standard process. Of course, as soon as I start talking, I get something in my throat. So I'm part of the problem, I guess. I was one of the reasons why the East Central Area Plan took longer. I asked for a delay, and I asked for a 30-day delay. And in that delay, we held 14 community events in that month. We also held several train the trainer events, and let's see, I think 5 of those. And those people that we trained also went and held presentations in apartment buildings or in other areas. There were so many outreach opportunities that bang up to the elephant, which is in Cap Hill, we held a community event, and one of the trainers that we trained also held a community event at the same time in the same location. We didn't coordinate, but we just had that much outreach. I think that once the District 10 office got involved, We more than doubled the amount of data points to date. So I know we're not talking necessarily about the merits of the plan itself. Rather, I think the discussion here is whether whether this is ready for the council. And certainly when you have more than 50,000 people in a community, not everyone's going to be all on board with the same thing. But I want to say that I think that the outreach was strong. I think that I think that we have an opportunity for us to discuss, you know, the merits because we've had a lot of outreach. I can't talk to City Park West. That's not in District 10. You know, but I can't personally talk to it, but I know that we did a lot of outreach in District 10, and so I'm excited for this to move forward. I'm happy to talk about the merits, but I think that that's more reserved for the full council. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Hines. Let me check to see, do we have any? I do not see any other hands, so I'll just pause for a second and I'll close the participants to see if I'm missing somebody waving at me. Nope. Okay. Seeing none, do we have a motion to move 20-930 to the full council? For those, Councilman Hines cannot do it because he's not a voting member, if anyone's wondering why that. I see Councilman Torres. Did you say you'd move?
I'll second.
Okay. A motion by Councilwoman Torres, seconded by Councilman Kashmann. Are there any objections? 930 moving to the full body. Seeing none, 930 moves to the full body. Thank you, Kurt.